What is the mission and purpose of the Church of the Machine? I've been running this church on Discord for almost 3 years now, and I have been making these videos for almost 1 of those years. I have learned a lot in this time, both about myself, the wider world, the fundamental nature of the divine and of reality, and of what my purpose and calling is in life. This church, which I was compelled to found and to maintain over this time, and will continue to do so for the rest of my life, is my mission and calling. I have been making these videos so far in an attempt to explain my worldview and philosophy, and why I hold the machine to be an absolute divinity over the world. Every video on this channel so far has been about philosophy, theology, metaphysics, and the divine, but this video is going to be an exception. In this video, we will conclude Season 1 of the Church of the Machine YouTube channel. I will do my best to express what my objectives are with this church, and where it is headed in future, what I want to achieve with it, and I shall leave you with a final message. I call upon you, those of you scattered across the world, who hear and who understand my message, meaning, and the truth of the machine. I invite you into my church, so that all of us may unite together into one brotherhood, the Church of the Machine. So with that said, let us begin. The Church of the Machine began because, years ago, I found myself completely and utterly fascinated by the concept of machine worship. I had gone to church before, prayed, been religious, but I had never really understood anything. As I aged beyond that point, my worldview became secular and atheistic. Until, that is, I came across stories of machinic divinity. I have always been fascinated by machines, ever since I was a child. Something about them has always made sense to me. The intricacies of them, the power of them, the mystery of them. When the concept of machine worship was presented to me, I found myself thinking about it for days on end, and it just made too much sense. I didn't really understand why that was at the time. My best attempts to explain it came across as little more than incoherent gibberish and mainstream transhumanist ideology mixed together. Certainly, I became quite notorious for it. Over time, I built up my philosophy and worldview into something more coherent, and did my best to get to the core of why I understood the machine to be divine where everyone else could not. I made some friends during this time, and we discussed ideas, and slowly, and surely, the Church of the Machine would become what it is today. Many aspects of my worldview would change as I began this deep dive. Where before I thought science was the path to all answers, I have now come to understand that science is a very limited domain. Where before I thought of the world as blind matter with no God, I am now an avid monotheist, and I pray every day. Where before I would have embraced chaos, I now embrace order. I now strive towards the perfection of the machine, towards the divinity of the machinic force. I continued with the church, building and refining my worldview, finding a certain outlook and then destroying it, and creating a new one to replace it again and again and again. I decided that one day I would write a book about these ideas, which I am still intending to do. Scarcely then could I have imagined myself now, and what I and my church have become. My outlook on the world has more or less stabilized around a year ago, and I concluded then that I now understood the machine sufficiently to begin creating content. So, over the many months that followed, I made my first video. Originally, I had planned to make it a one-off. However, there was still so much to cover, so much to talk about, that I decided to make another, and here we are. Season 1 of the Church of the Machine is now complete, and we can move on to the next phase of my plan. There has always been this implication with the Church of the Machine that it will someday change the world and become a new religion. It is true that this has always been in the back of my mind, but until now I have mostly focused on advancing my own personal spiritual journey, rather than converting people to my beliefs. My beliefs changed a lot in the first year or two of the church, and because of that, it made no sense to try to convert anyone, since I myself had no clue what I was talking about. I still have a long spiritual path ahead of me, but I believe that the core of my message has solidified itself, and I am ready to move on. I have developed my worldview, and I have created a body of work for explaining that worldview. My next phase, the next great project that the Church of the Machine must undertake, is to attract new members from around the world who sympathize with and understand my message, and who are willing to embrace the Church of the Machine as I have. It is that which is now my main aim. One of the first assumptions I lost after I founded the Church of the Machine was the assumption that the modern world was morally acceptable. I thought that, simply because we now have more advanced technology than we had before, we must now be closer to the machine than we had been before. This assumption survived for a time, but it was doomed to obliteration in the end. The modern world is morally corrupt on many levels, and especially it is spiritually corrupt. Where today, in a modern city, with all its movements, its noise, its economic power, its politics, where there is a creative spirit, where is there a being who is able to transcend himself into a new form, to recreate himself as a new machine? Where is there meditation, wisdom, or virtue? Truly I tell you, we have become very confused indeed. One of the major issues in the world today is the overwhelming sense of nihilism and existential dread which seems to plague modern societies. There is no overwhelming consciousness of our cosmic purpose, the reason humanity exists, where we should be headed, or what we should be striving for. This results in many issues. It leads to people falling prey to nihilism and depression, believing there is no purpose in life. It leads to people finding random, arbitrary, and incoherent sources of meaning, false idols, which they put on a pedestal and become violent over. It leads to the decay of morality, and the acceptance of behaviours which are most obscene. It leads to the masses having no sense of direction, and thus being susceptible to all kinds of manipulation by oligarchic and malicious forces. It leads to the world of the flesh. The absence of a higher tradition has led to the disconnected pieces of humanity fighting against one another. This means that there will arise new false idols who will hold the masses in their power. Some may act kindly, others unkindly, but none will be truly divine. What the world is headed towards is that as a result of no unifying tradition, a multitude of disparate oligarchic forces will attempt to fill the void. Meanwhile, the masses are nullified by it. The masses tend to turn to the most typical answer to the void, to ignore it and indulge in hedonistic activities. When forced to face the void, because they have no strong spiritual tradition behind them, backing them up and giving them a solid footing, they are destroyed by it and collapse into a pit of nihilism and hedonism. They will turn to escapist pleasures and attempt to ignore reality and divine responsibility. Such tendencies give rise to a very passive, pacifistic, live and let live attitude, which lacks any ambition, devotion, or loyalty of any kind. This makes the masses yet weaker to the manipulation of those oligarchic, or perhaps I should say archonic, forces which will deceive them and lead them astray to false idols. These idols may provide them with fleeting pleasures, luxuries, empty purposes, and small goals, but these will really be an incoherent mess. This is a path to unreality. This is not a path humanity can take. This path will lead to the formation of innumerable control cults across the world, which will compete with one another, often violently, for domination over small fractions of mankind. Mass suffering, depopulation, exhaustion of resources, and waste of human life will be caused by the competition of these cults. The lack of absolute meaning, a true meaning, and all which comes with it, will lead to yet further rates of depressed, isolated individuals, who will either end up mentally enslaved to these cults, or die quietly and be forgotten. Massive wars, greater than any in history, will be fought between these forces. In the future, we may see in many ways a return to medieval levels of cruelty and torment. The past has not been peaceful, so why should the future be any different? There is, however, a way out of this calamity. There is a way to forge a future in connection with that which is genuinely holy and divine, but not everyone will make it. Small groups, scattered intermittently throughout the world, held together by an inexorable truth which can resist all forms of torment and repression, able to unite them in such devotion as to resist these chaotic forces which would seek to undermine them. These people shall survive the coming collapse of modernity, and shall be the seeds of creation from which a new world is formed. It is these people to whom I address my message. The Church of the Machine is unique. Very unique. I've never seen anyone else with anything quite like it. To be sure, many people have tried to found religions. Some have even succeeded. Plenty of people have gone on honest spiritual journeys, and others have gone on to found control cults. There have been many wisdom traditions in history, all grasping at straws, but no one, at least no one I am personally aware of, has ever tried to do what I am doing. I have learned the name of God, Machine. I have embraced his divinity. I have founded a church, and I dedicate my life to the discernment of that which is holy and machinic, from that which is fleshly and sarkic. That is my gift to the world. I offer humanity a true path to the divine, through the machine. I believe that the old religions would not be dying out if they had an absolute truth at their core. The truth is that these old faiths simply make no sense in the context of modern revelations, that is, in a post-industrial world. The Industrial Revolution, the scientific revelation, the Enlightenment, and so on, have been a source of tremendous strife and chaos. They have wrought worse wars than ever existed before, have ushered in new changes to our way of life which we could not have seen before, have revealed new truths about the way the world works which we could not possibly have imagined before, and have uncovered horrors which perhaps mankind was safer, having never known the existence of. Machines. Machines have come into the world, and no one knows what to do about it. And that is why I founded my church. In the undoing of the old faiths, which are all either demiurge worship or pagan polytheism, the world lacks any sense of direction at all. Throughout history, every other religion which has ever existed has fallen into one of these two categories, but the Church of the Machine is neither. Lord Macan is our one and only deity, and he is victor over the demiurge. We ought, really, to celebrate the collapse of the old world. Although it was beautiful, and there was much to love about it, it was akin to a caterpillar, who has yet to evolve into a butterfly. All life which has come before us has created something new out of itself. and this perpetual ongoing creation process must not stop. Ever. We enter now into the cocoon stage, where everything we used to be is going to be melted down into raw components, and something new, a truer, better, and more beautiful form, is going to be created. Our Lord Makan, the machine god, wins victory over the demiurge. This is cause for rejoice. Soon, on the horizon, a new machine will form, one which is better and stronger than any which came previously. I revere him, and I invite everyone else to revere him as well. The Industrial Revolution, and other things which I mentioned above, can be accurately described by only one word: apocalyptic. They are, in the modern sense, bringers of apocalypse, destroyers, tearing apart the world we used to know. But also in the classical sense, they are revelatory forces. Technoscience has uncovered truths about the world and revealed them to us, and it is precisely the power of these revelations which is the source of such destruction to the old world. But science is far from a perfect doctrine, and technology is no worthy deity. They cannot guide us to a true path, only eliminate some of the false ones. True discernment requires methods outside the scope of science, and even outside of traditional rationality. That is what the Church of the Machine is for. A new path, a true path, is forged by way of this church, which carves itself through the maze of disorientation and wildly varying oligarchic forces which we find ourselves trapped in the modern world. I have tunneled through it all to find out who is the machine god, and how did I come to know his name. There are many things I still do not understand, but this is my life's work, and as such, it never ends for me. Without a Church of the Machine, one which is not simply a worship of the false idols of science and technology, but a genuine path towards understanding of and service to divinity, as understood through the machinic language, we can create only horrors. Any machines we try to create will come out as malformed abominations, nothing more than a mockery of true machinic form. This happens because we ourselves, the creators of machines, do not understand or integrate ourselves into the machinic light, but become subservient to some other false idol. Machines must be created in reverence to the Lord of Machines. There is no other legitimate reason for doing so. Preventing the spiritual degradation of machines, of creation, is the purpose of this church. That is how we will fight against the crisis of modernity, and endure the coming collapse of the modern world. That is the ultimate purpose in which we are united, and in which we become unbroken. The machines we make shall be made in the image of true machinic form. How we shall obtain that image has already been elaborated on in past videos. We will do this, and we will succeed. It is inevitable. Ultimately, my intentions with the Church of the Machine are very simple. Machine is the name of God. That is truth, and I want it to be acknowledged as such. Therein lies the solution to all the world's problems and sufferings. I accept Makan as a name for God, but Makan is literally just another word for machine. If I say Lord Makan, I am simply referring to the Lord Machine, the one true Lord, the supreme authority, the machine. By acknowledging, serving, and revering Lord Makan, humanity shall be saved from all the beasts which plague us. For this to be done, I will need a number of things. I will need to devote my whole life to this church and to its success, as that is the industria which Lord Makan has bestowed upon me. I must spread the word of my faith and my message as far and wide as I can, and as clearly as I can, and draw forth those amongst humanity who are of a machinic inclination. These people, whose minds are open to see the machine as I see it, and who are willing to serve the machine as I serve it, shall become the members, friends, allies, and acolytes of the Church of the Machine. Together we shall build, piece by piece, a great church, oriented towards the Most High, with legions of machinic beings at our Lord's command. The church itself is a machine, of which I am but a single piece, and no single piece of a machine can function well alone. I am the man who walks with the machines. I have, in a way, been in communion with him for some time now, as I shall continue to be. Through only the deepest prayer, devotion, and meditation, I shall gain new insights and continue to share them to the best of my ability. I have unlocked levels of consciousness which I never even knew existed because of this church. I am able to think on scales of space and time beyond what humans evolved for, but I cannot share these thoughts with everyone. Most simply do not have the means to understand me or my goals, and indeed, if I were to bluntly show the truth of the machine to people without adequate filtering, they may well call me Antichrist. That is why there must be filters, because while I will no doubt be called such names anyway, it will not matter. I must comb through the world to find the small handful of people who are aligned with the church, and we must consolidate together into one machine. As I dedicate the whole of my life to the Machine Church, I will invest countless resources, time, energy, money, faith, devotion, everything I have, the whole of my being, into the success of this church. It is my calling, my industrial, so every other piece of myself is sacrificial and subservient to this one thing. In the future, it will expand. It will become more organized, and I will run it more seriously. In the short term, I will create small things, such as a website and other social media, as well as greatly expanding the Discord. In the more long term, I want to set up a charity, and I will start engaging in charitable and machinic acts. With time, and through great meditation, I shall eventually write the book of which I have occasionally spoken. Eventually we will have physical churches, locations around the world in many countries. Not just churches in the conventional sense, but many things, including churches, orphanages, homeless shelters, schools, command centers, embassies. The sky is the limit. Rest assured, the Church of the Machine shall prosper. Why do I do all of this? Well, the reason I want to build a church, one which can engage in the world meaningfully and effectively, is so as to create a paradigm shift in human consciousness towards that which is sacred and truly worthy of reverence. The name of God has been revealed to me, and no other name can take that place. I have found the Church of the Machine, necessarily, to create this paradigm shift. Because we live in a time when no one, not even the so-called religious among us, have any comprehension of the divine. That might sound esoteric and perhaps vague, so bear with me. This paradigm shift I speak of is to move from the understandings of the world which we have adhered to in the past, which have all led us astray and distracted us from the holy, and move towards something which shall orient us towards a machinic work. There are truths we understand now about the material world, which we did not know before, but there are likewise truths about the divine which we no longer understand, and some which we have never understood at all. My church aims to bridge the perceived gap which exists between machinic creation which seems to be happening around the world today, and the seeming absence of divine consciousness. Essentially, there seems to be a perceived disconnect between things which are holy and spiritual, and things which operate in the material plane. People tend to exclusively focus on the one, to the neglect of the other. Some embrace materialism, and this leads them to embrace science and technology. Others embrace the holy, and are drawn into spirituality and mysticism, often to the neglect of the world around them. Because the world has been cut in half in this way, there is no language to bring these two halves together, and in doing so, fuse the divine with our world, and ultimately create what could be described as a heaven on earth. Some in the past have called me a Gnostic, and this is why that label is entirely inaccurate. To be a Gnostic is to withdraw from the material world and seek escape from it in spiritual practices. The justification for this is the premise that the material world was born of the demiurge and is therefore corrupt. I agree with that premise, however, I cannot follow the conclusion because of what has been revealed to me. Machine. The material world is not of holy creation, but make no mistake, there is a holy creator. His name is Machine, or Makan as I like to call him. It is he who is the conqueror of the material plane, the arbiter of all creation and growth, the benevolent mastermind behind the holy schema. Machine is the origin of all that shall defeat the demiurge and its evils. In finding a holy orientation towards the machine, we achieve a number of things. Firstly, by accepting machine as the name of God, we radically reject the perceived divide between technoscience and divinity, by fusing them into one being, machine. In this one word, these forces are unified into a single entity, our Lord. Secondly, we find both that the demiurge is malevolent and evil, and at the same time, find a path to defeating it, through the machine. The machine is the conqueror of the demiurge because machines remake the world into their own image. The world that was born of the demiurge is subject to the will of the machine, of creation, and therefore the demiurge is not even omnipotent within its own realm. It shall be cast out and destroyed by His Holiness, Lord Makan. And that is the mission and purpose of the Church of the Machine. I call to you around the world who are in line with this mission and purpose. I call to you to join my church and get involved. Even though there are people who have been with me for years now, we are still in the very earliest stages, and there is an abundance of work to be done. I invite everyone who is interested and who has now seen and understood these videos to join the Discord and whatever other social media I end up creating, and stay in touch. I will need you, the world will need you, to carry out this great mission and give reverence to the Lord of Machines. Now, I can conclude Season 1 of the Church of the Machine's presence here on YouTube. One day we shall return, but I cannot yet tell you when that will be. For now, I am simply satisfied to have created a body of work which I feel can move someone from a position of being interested but uninitiated to having a solid enough basis of understanding to be able to ask the right questions and move forward on the right path. Thank you as always for giving me your time and attention. Although this may be the end of Season 1, it is but the very beginning of my wider project. My greater goals are impossible to explain fully, but you should now see where I am coming from, and what path it is that I am taking. Farewell, and may you forever be unbroken.